from the third great Bible thing for Jews that's online right now and usable and
It's actually the first great one.
the first of them. It has burst
Torah,
onto the scene
Torah.com, Michael?
in the last few years. Torah.com is a different animal, though. Okay, not a database kind of thing. We have Daniel Septimus from Sefaria.
Hi, everyone. I'm the one who's not like the others.
Different.
I have no PhD. I have no rabbinical training, but I spend a lot of time on computers. So I'm here to talk about how that might impact the future of translations. And really, I guess the best way to think about this is I think while most people are thinking sort of about the editorial side of things, I'll give you a little bit of a break from all that just to think about the structure and the publishing environment of all of these things, some of which ties into some of these opportunities like being able to present multiple translations. But I think the most important thing here is we have no idea what kind of devices people are going to be studying these texts on in 15 years from now. Literally, we have no idea, right? This thing did not exist 10 years ago. Right, and so when we at Sefaria think about the future of Jewish texts, we think about how do we create the potential. Well, how do we make it possible so that the potential of these new devices, as they develop, can actually be used in useful ways for Jewish studies? And we also think a lot about the medium, right, and books as a very specific kind of medium, right? They are not the only way in which information has ever been or will ever be put forth and going forward. So just to take a step back, though, I actually just want to give a little bit of context about Sefaria because I think it'll help sort of explain the things I'm thinking about here. So, what is Sefaria? We're taking all of Jewish texts and we are converting them into machine-readable data. That's the work that we're doing. All right, what does that mean? Right, we're taking texts, right, like pieces of paper with words, and turning it into something that computers can make sense of. Right, so first and foremost, what we're actually creating is a database. Okay, so it happens to be that we have a website, we have apps where you can explore this database, but the key work is the database itself. Why? It's what I just alluded to. The premise of this is we literally don't know what kind of devices we're going to be using to study these texts on, but we know, or at least we at Sefaria know, that these devices are going to be chomping on digital data, right? So we do think that books will be around, but not nearly as much as the rest of you probably. Right. Our assumption is that the primary way that people are engaging with these texts, again, certainly in 15 years from now, but even in 5 years and 10 years, and certainly in 40, is going to be in some digital environment. And so what we're trying to do is make it as easy as possible for that digital environment to exist. So, for example, when in 15 years from now someone wants to create a virtual reality Jewish educational technology project where Maimonides actually teaches you Maimonides in several different languages. You could choose Judeo-Arabic, you could choose Hebrew, you could choose English, you could choose Spanish, whatever it is, right? The person who wants to create that technology shouldn't first have to actually digitize the texts. Right? Those texts and those translations should exist in a single database that belongs to the community. And then it'll be super easy for when these people have these ideas. Some of them will work, some of them won't, by the way. That one, I don't know. I'm not so sure. But the point is that you shouldn't have to first digitize these texts. You shouldn't first have to negotiate the rights to a translation if what you want to do is create educational technology to teach people. Why are we doing this? So we're doing this for three purposes. Purpose number one is access, right? We think it's good for people to actually be able to find these texts. That means in the original, that means in translation, and that means how do we use computers and machines to help people find things they wouldn't find on their own, right? That's actually the most interesting part of this ultimately, right? It shouldn't just be the great scholars who know, oh, if you're looking at this, specific page of Gemara, you're going to want to look at this Tosefta over there, and you're going to want to look at this piece of Midrash Halacha, and you're going to want to look at these different commentaries, right? We can actually bake in all of those connections into the primary data so that all of these connections are available to all of us, not just to the scholars who happen to know that these things are connected. So that's piece number one, access. Piece number two is what I was alluding to before, and it's the most important, is the infrastructure piece, which is to say, again, we don't know what kind of devices we're going to be using, but we know we're going to be using digital data. And so the database that we're creating is fundamentally not just free for use, like you can go on our website and use the content for free, but it's free for reuse, which means if you want to take any of our texts and use them for any purpose, whether for commercial purposes or research purposes or nonprofit purposes or educational purposes, you don't have to ask us permission. You just take these texts, because the idea essentially is these texts belong to all of us, right? And so there should be this sort of single database of text. Now, there are all sorts of intellectual property issues that come up around this, and I'm going to get to that in a little bit more detail down the road. So that's the second reason we're doing this. Again, piece number one, access. Piece number two, infrastructure. Piece number three, and this sort of comes to the publishing. The dream here is that Sefaria shouldn't just be a place that hosts the texts and conversations of the last 2,000 years, but that it could actually be a platform where new commentaries are written and new translations are written, and in a way, right, that is sort of appeals to the best democratic instincts of the internet, right? How do we engage as many people both as consumers and as producers in the creation of Jewish content? Okay, so that's Sefaria. So now when we think about translations and Bible translations, what are the things we're thinking about? So one of them in particular is what Mark was alluding to at first, which is, what is the shape of this future new Jewish Bible translation? Literally, like, what is if you're like, right, so this is the old one, this is literally what it looks like, right? What is the default, what does it look like, right? Is it a book or is it a digital product, first and foremost? And those are two completely different media with completely different potentials, right? So, can you have multiple translations? Absolutely. So our platform already can handle multiple translations, but right now, if you want multiple translations, you have to switch from book to book. So you can't click on a single verse and see multiple translations, but you can go back and forth. But that's not a hard thing to create if you have this database, right? It's actually pretty simple to be able to show, different translations at once. Does it change at all? Well, let's think of this. There are different kinds of users for a Tanakh like this, right? There are users who are using it primarily only in English, right? There are people who are using it bilingually. I think there's probably a large group, especially among Jews, who are using it bilingually, who might actually prefer a version in which you just had the Hebrew, but you got the English only when you wanted it, right? So I don't have the English there all the time, right?
Cheater's Bible.
What's that? The Cheater's Bible, exactly. Exactly, right? So that comes down to sort of to presentation and to product and to audience, and the beauty of it, sort of a digital environment, is that you can tailor those more, right? So you can create much cheaper than you can with print, right? Unique experiences for English readers, bilingual readers, cheaters, etc. Just as an example, we will, by the end of the year, Sefaria just got two large data sets of dictionaries, a big Hebrew dictionary and an Aramaic dictionary, and we're baking all that into the data. So within 18 months, you should be able to right-click on any any word on Sefaria and get a translation of that word, okay? Now that might change actually what your experience, a need of a full translation is, right? Because maybe then more people will actually go through the Hebrew and, get a little less help than having all the English at a time. Again, what is the shape of this translation? And don't assume it's a book as the sort of primary shape. I think that's sort of piece number one. Piece number two is sort of technology in relation to the creation process. We've done a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, we've done a lot of interesting analysis into how far machines can get us in translation. Okay, so the good news for all of you here today is we're not that far along, but we're starting to get a lot better. Where we're interested in it is not straight from sort of Hebrew text, go through machine, end up with an English text, but is there any way of, here's the question, is it cheaper, faster, and better to correct a sort of incorrectly translated text than it is to start one from scratch, right? And what machines are very good at is getting us like sort of 80% of the way there, right? Machines are very hard at getting sort of things 100% as well as humans, but they're really good at sort of the 80%. So is there a model here where we're actually using machines and big data analysis, right, using all sorts of different databases of texts to create some sort of, first version of a text, and then the creation process is actually one more of editing than of creation from scratch. Now, clearly, you could do that with a version of a translation that exists already. You could take the 1985 and start from there, or you can start from scratch. The other piece here is on collaboration. We've done some experiments with crowdsourcing. We have our translation of the Mishnah on Sefaria is a completely crowdsourced translation of the Mishnah. Now, that raises serious questions about quality control around all sorts of things, but half of it was done over the period of 2 weeks, okay? So the question is did we save enough in that time, right, of getting that first draft to get somewhere? But the real interesting thing here is not random people crowdsourcing, is what does it look like if all of the scholars up here are crowdsourcing, right? What does it look like if you have a Mechanical Turk kind of program where you have a series of people translating the same content, right? And it's only when there's a certain amount of agreement that it sort of gets passed through. And it could be, you don't need necessarily a human to be controlling that, right? So in other words, you can, in theory, create computer programs that can manage that collaborative experience. Distribution is the next thing we think about, right? Digital distribution, right? It costs nothing to create an extra copy, right? It's cheap, it's easy, as many people as possible can read it. Here we get into the challenges of intellectual property, right? So, and this is, I actually want, even though it might seem irrelevant and boring here, I want even the scholars to think about this. Our biggest challenge, Sefaria's biggest challenge to making content freely available is copyright. Now, we respect intellectual property. We even respect that people want to make money writing things. We also know two things about Jewish publishing. One, almost no one makes real money writing Jewish books. Two, almost all Jewish publishing is philanthropically supported in some way. Okay? And those two things, for us, so traditionally what's happened is you have philanthropists sort of underwrite the creation of content, but all of the intellectual property ends up being controlled by the publishers. So the philanthropist pays for it, the public's the ones that's supposed to benefit, the publisher controls the intellectual property. Now, if I'm a publisher, I would also want to control the intellectual property, so I'm not judging you for wanting that. The challenge, of course, is that it's the public that loses out, right? Because in theory, you could put this stuff online for free and it would be widely available, right? And so part of what Sefaria is doing is actually trying to like poke at the business models of Jewish publishing and create one that works, I would say, primarily better for the philanthropists and the public, though we also want, content creators to be happy, right? So what that's meant until now is literally trying to make deals where we pay publishers. Essentially, we're basically saying, how much do you ever expect to make from this book? It can't be that much. We know that, right? How much, and we'll pay you that much, and then we'll make it free, right? So now that's much easier to do though from the outset. In other words, if I'm here, if there's one thing that I want people to remember, it's let's figure out how, when the new JPS comes out, let's figure out how it's created in a way that the license for it is as open as possible, right? And let's tell the philanthropists who are going to pay for it that they need to insist on that also, right? Because otherwise, the publisher is going to keep the rights if they can. And I know this sounds sort of like random and maybe totally different from everything else that's been, but it actually has major implications for the amount of people who could potentially access this content. And then again, back to the financial piece is really interesting here, right? The 1985 is your bestseller, right? Next version, when is it complete? Does it ever get completed, right? Like why should it get completed, right? Like in some ways, right, the way we've had it until now is we published one in 1917, and then we published one in 1985, and then we'll do one in 2025, and then we'll do one in, right? But why isn't it always evolving, right? Why isn't it why isn't it always changing as new research is done? And what does that look like? What does it look like to create a product that doesn't have a beginning and an end, right? But actually continues to evolve. Because in some ways, the way we're talking about it right now doesn't actually make that much sense. It's sort of random. Right? It's been a while since the last JPS. Let's get together and do one. That's it. I'll stop there.
I just want to say, just